Hello you guys, I'm gonna be showing you guys how to make custom motion captured animations and using Motive, Motion Builder, and OptiTracks and import them into the Unreal 4 engine. So we're going to start off by opening our Motive and Motion Builder programs. So the first step to this really is going to be setting up our cameras. And so as we can see on the screen here, there's a list of all the cameras we have set up in the room. But they're straight forward because the cameras are not calibrated yet. So in order to calibrate them, we're going to go through a process called the wanding process. So as you can see here, I'm going to put together the wand that we use in order to calibrate our cameras. The wand comes in two pieces, the pull, which has a cap, which we're going to unscrew, and then the head of the wand, which we're going to attach and rescrew the cap on the pull, just like so. After we do this, we're going to grab three little nodes that we have in a bag here, and we're going to attach each of those three nodes onto this head of our wand. Now these nodes are the only thing that these cameras are set to pick up, so if you move around, it won't actually detect anything related to you. It'll just detect nodes, which is why when you see motion capture suits, they have all the white dots on them, and that's exactly what we're putting on our wand here. Make sure they're in nice and tight because we're going to be waving this thing around and we don't want them to fall off. So going back to Motive, we see our cameras here, once again, not calibrated. So down here is a picture, a box for each camera, and we're going to hit Start Wanding, and we're going to block visible markers. This is essentially until the camera that any reflective surface it's currently seeing is irrelevant. So for the wanding process, you basically just want to create figure eights in your workspace. In the particular workspace that I'm working with, we have a square area and a big open hallway essentially. And so we're just going to make our figure eights all around, let the cameras see where they are relative to each other. This is a process that we're going to do every single time that we want to start using motion capture. Once we turn Motive off, the cameras are no longer going to recognize where they are, but we will save out the setup. I recalibrate it every time just to make sure things are right in case a camera gets tipped or moved. But even the slightest could skew your cameras. Alright, so we're going to go back here. We're going to see the process. You're going to see the colors start to appear in each of the boxes here. These colors are where the camera is picking up the wand's motion. And so, as you can see, our boxes are going to start to fill up. And on the right side here, we have a white box with a list of all our cameras by number. And then we have a list of numbers to the right of it. And so those numbers are essentially the area of the camera's vision that it's seeing the wand go through. In order to make sure that this is sufficient, we're going to want the wand to have seen 2,000 units, or been seen in 2,000 units for each of the cameras. So we're going to go through and we're going to look on our right side and make sure that each of those numbers ends up hitting 2,000. Once this happens, we'll be all set to move forward. A key thing to remember here is most of the time certain cameras are calibrated to look at the floor or to look higher up. So for my space in particular, we have our 8th camera that looks straight down on the ground. So during the wanding process, you'll notice that I'm paying a lot of attention to the 8th camera, because that camera is going to be the one that I really have to, scrape the ground, and it kind of won't be picked up when I'm working the wand around different camera spaces. And so we're going to keep going here, and you can see the red box, the red splotches on one of the camera are just the markers that were blocked that we told the camera to do prior to, which is good. So once we're done here, we're going to have it calculate everything. So it's going to go on through. It's going to just register and make sure everything's good. And it's going to come back. And we need to come back with something that at least is exceptional. So for us, we have our exceptional marker, which we don't want anything less. So once we do that, we're going to set the markers. We're going to apply that to the space. Once we do that, you're going to see when we zoom out here, the cameras are on a rectangular pattern like they are, but they're not positioned right. As far as it's concerned, the cameras are going through the floor right now. And that's because we didn't actually set a ground plane for the computer to process. So we're going to do this by taking out our ground plane tool. Ground plane tool you want centered in the space, and you want it pointing towards the computer that we're working on for our setup. So as you can see, there's a Z on the ground plane tool representing our Z axis, and we want that pointing in the correct direction. And so once that's set up, we're going to look at our space again just to see what it's missing, and then we hit the set ground plane tool. And then here's where we save out our space, like I was talking about earlier, which you can always go back to. But anyways, once that's established, you see that there's now a rectangular group of cameras around the top, because it's now aware, hey, I'm at the top, which is, what you want. So we're going to go here to the top right corner and click the Create Layout button. This is going to bring up a character model, and we want to go in and we want to click on the 41 hinged toe option. It's the one that we're going to be using, and then it'll place all the nodes on this character model for us to look at. We can spin it around there and see all of them, and once we have those nodes, we now know where to put them on our person wearing the motion builder suit. So here we have our lovely volunteer opting to throw on the suit. So the suit comes in a couple pieces here. So we have our jacket piece, which has our hands and some little straps that go around your fingers. Then that zips on up. Like so. Perfect. And then so we also have our pants, which will just slide up. And so the pants here have a little cloth piece that goes around the sole of your foot, kind of by the heel, in front of the heel. And so we got to get that there, and then you got to belt that up. Alright. And then so we also have a few more pieces here. We have our shoes and our hat. Shoes are just kind of cloth. They have no cloth on the sole, so you're just going to be walking with your feet on the ground, but they kind of wrap around just to cover all of your white socks. And then they have a strap that you just strap up in the back. Just going to throw those bad boys on. Alright, and then we're going to throw on our hat here. And now we're looking good. Alright, so after we have everything all set, we're going to want to come here. We're going to want to start putting our nodes on our volunteer to be in the motion capture suit. So the nodes in general, if you recall earlier, we said we were doing the 41 hinged toe that structure is set up and has 35 nodes placed between the body, legs, arms, and head, and then has a total of 6 nodes between the 2 hands. So the 41 hinge toe structure that we're using in specific does not have any motion for the fingers themselves. So for example, our model could not make a fist or bend fingers individually. The model will always have a straight hand or whatever the skeletal mesh that we're using has. So there's 3 nodes that go on the head. Then we have our shoulder nodes, one on our chest. You have 2 on the hips, 2 on the back, right above the rear end. Then you have 2 nodes on the front of the legs, and it's important to note that the nodes on the legs are staggered between the 2 legs. This is so when the cameras are looking at this model, it can say to itself, alright, this is one leg, this is the other. If the nodes are not staggered enough, the cameras will not be able to tell the difference between the 2 legs, and the model itself that we're tracking onto will look very peculiar. So we're gonna go over here so you can see, take a look at what's on the screen right now. So basically, as you can see, during this whole process, these nodes are starting to show up on our screen. It's the little white dots, and they're starting to be populated. It's kind of a cool thing to see for the first time, because it starts off with just a floating bag of white nodes, and as you place them, you kind of get this humanoid shape starting to form, and that humanoid shape obviously being our model, which is what we want. So we're going to continue placing them here, and I'm just going to give you a look at what this looks like here. Make sure you spin your model around here on the screen to see that the person in real life has the nodes in the correct spots and has all 35 on the body. Every once in a while on the screen it might look like there's a node floating around. The cameras every once in a while, for some reason, at least in my setup, will show a scattered node kind of floating off on its own here or there. Make sure that there's no actual nodes like exposed to the cameras besides the ones you're using. But if there is, there's a count right below our figure here. So right now says the camera is picking up 30 of 41 nodes, 41 being the number we need. And so if you ever see 42 out of 41, you obviously have an extra one. But if you see 41 out of 41, it appears that there's an extra node floating around. Don't worry about it. It's just a little graphical glitch per se. So this can be quite the long process, but it's one that you want to make sure you do well. There can be errors after creating this figure, after you place all the nodes, if they're not staggered enough or separated enough on the different joints or whatnot. So you really want to take your time, make sure that the nodes are placed correctly. And remember that the nodes are marking joints, so they're going to be around a joint. They're not going to be just randomly placed throughout. So we're going to take a quick look here at the hands. Hands are interesting. They have 3 points and 1 point without a node. The point without a node is the point that's going to be facing the thumb. Also note that for our setup, our hand pieces have the word OptiTracks written on them, which will be facing outwards. So once our hands are on, we want our person to T-pose, and we're going to hit create, which creates this kind of filled out-esque sort of model in our motive. And when he moves around, so will the model in there. Pretty cool. We got the first start of our motion capturing. Feel free to name the model whatever suits you. Alright, so right here I'm switching over to Motion Builder and dragging in the Unreal Mannequin, which is what we're going to be using in particular for our scene. So as you can see, our mannequin's now in Motion Builder. So Motion Builder, essentially motion capture in general, uses skeletons, and this is essentially where the correlation between your live model and your mannequin are going to be made, and so it's going to connect the labeled skeletons we have on our live model to our mannequin. So when we go in here, we're going to go into our characters, and we're going to drag character onto the pelvis. Make sure you do that, and when you hit create, it's going to list off some errors. This is because we don't have our character's body parts labeled. So we're going to go to the top right and open up our character, and as you see, there's missing pieces. So you just click on the piece in your hierarchy, right click over on our far right, and click assign selected bone. So we're going to go through and we're going to do this for each bone. This also is quite the tedious process, but one that has to be done. So our list that is said prior to this is a list of all the bones that are needed at bare minimum for our setup. So that's going to be upper, lower, left and right arm, left and right hand, upper, lower, left and right leg, lower, right and left leg, pelvis, and yeah, that's what we need. So once you do that, you're going to slide this over, and we're going to go to characterize and hit biped, because our human is a biped. So once we do this, we're telling it what those parts of the skeleton are called. Now we're going to go into devices. We're going to drag the OptiTracks device into our scene. And on the OptiTracks tab that will pop up once we do this, we'll be able to drag in and make this connection of motive and motion builder thanks to the OptiTracks. First, we have to go back to motive, and we have to go into our menu here. I'm going to bring up the sidebar menu, and there's a few things that we have to make sure that we change on this menu. We need local playback loop, and we have to switch it to a FPX file, and we need it to stream data. So we're going to get all this done quickly. Alright. Once we have that here, I'm going to click online. I'm going to check off all these, and so we're going to hit create to make a new character, and once you hit create is when this yellow skeleton will come up. I had prior made a character off screen, and so that's why my skeleton appeared the second I hit online. Once you make that character, you're going to go now into our hierarchy and find the OptiTracks skeleton and drag character back onto its pelvis. That'll then create our new character. And then we're going to go back to our original character, and we're going to select his rig to be following, and we're going to switch our new OptiTracks skeleton, and we can go into display and we can turn off models, and there we have our live character connected to our mannequin. Look at that. It's a fun thing to see. So make sure whenever you do anything, always have the live model start in a T-pose. That's very important. And to record, you're going to hit the record button, and you're going to not want to overwrite any data. You want to create new data, and you don't want to bring anything over from previous takes. Then you just hit your play button to record it, and you'll see it appear in our hierarchy under takes, and I highly recommend renaming every single take. Reset it back to 0. Always make sure it's at 0 there, and then record. We want to create a new one. We don't want to bring any data over. We have our new file. Double click, make sure you're on it. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to once again hit play to record some new motion. There we go. Beautiful. Alright, I'm going to disconnect our OptiTracks here by unchecking everything. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to save out our takes. Everything should be checked off for you. You don't have to worry about that. That's all default. Just save that out. And once we do that, I usually just close everything down. That's how I prefer to do things. But you don't have to. But anyways, once you close everything down, if you do it that way, reopen your take, and then you can go ahead, look at all your takes, or reopen your file, and you can look at your takes and hit play, and they should play back to you for what you recorded. If that's the case, then we're good to keep going. So we have our wave and our little walk. Wave twice because I didn't double click. Alright, so you're going to want to go here back to your character. You're going to want to go ahead and you're going to want to plot to the skeletal rig. Once you're in here, make sure you check off plot all takes. And once we get in plot all takes, everything else should be defaulted for us. It's going to go ahead through there. It's going to plot essentially the animations to our skeleton. So if you don't plot it when you bring the file into Unreal, it's not going to actually come up the correct way. So we need to make sure that we plot everything to the skeleton. And save that out. Now we have our plotted file, so we're going to open up Unreal here. Launch, I'm currently running on, at the time of the video, the newest Unreal Engine. The current patch for the engine. Alright, so once you're in here, it's just very simple from here. We're just going to click the import button. We're going to find our file here on the computer. A whole cluster of random nonsense. Alright, we're going to want to open our file. Once it's open, it's going to bring up this checkbox. Everything should be checked off for you. Sometimes default's not importing animations. Make sure you click that checkbox. Import animations. And hit import all. This is a very long process, so I'm going to go ahead and just fast forward us here through part of it. And, it takes, depends on how many animations you're going for. The file I'm currently importing isn't actually the one that we just took there of the 2 animations. It's one I've done previously that has maybe 15 animations on it. And so that file, to import it, takes like 10 minutes probably, so it's nothing to be concerned about if it's taking a long time. It's probably actually should feel safe. So Motion Builder is really good for us because it allows us to import into Unreal with all the animations in one file, which certain programs like Maya don't allow us to do. that has you import each animation separately, which is a pain. As you see here, an error message will come up. That always happens. It's fine. Ignore it. Exit out. As you can see, all our animations imported for us nicely, which is what we want. Double click on our mannequin to open up. You'll see skeleton, mesh, and animation. Double click animation. There will be a list of all our available animations. And just click on that, and you can see our animations running in the previewer. And there we have our animations for our character. There we have it. Go through all these silly animations I did. And that is our A through Z process of setting up and recording motion capture, plotting it onto the Unreal mannequin and bringing it into Unreal. You can also replot to different skeletons, which I will link in the description of the video on a little tutorial for that. Thank you. Bye.